Everyone to another episode of Be Real Talks. I'm Sophia Gibri. Today we have with us Jermel McClure. He is a trailblazing leader dedicated to cultivating community. Jermel was the first Black Student Association president and CEO. He graduated from Binghamton University in 2018 with a degree in political science. After graduating, he joined JP Morgan's private bank as a private banking analyst working with private equity institutions and individuals. He then joined BLACE, a real estate technology startup based in New York City as a founding team member. Jermel is an active Binghamton University alum who is passionate about uplifting the Bearcat community. Today, we're going to be looking at his experience in finance and navigating office politics. Thank you so much for joining us, Jermel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my first question for you, can you just tell us so far, what's your experience in the financial district been like?
It's been, I think I could phrase it in 3 words or 3 phrases. I think first, it's been eye-opening. I was not really sort of privy to the rigid corporate structure that I was going into joining JP Morgan as an analyst. I had some exposure as an intern, but I think that once you start full time and you're working day in and day out, you really are immersed in a corporate culture that is unlike cultures on college campuses. So definitely eye-opening. Additionally, I would say that it was super developmental for me in that I learned a lot of grit, I learned a lot of grind, and really how to put the pedal to the metal no matter what, whether I was interested in the subject matter I was working on or not. And I appreciated that sort of work ethic that was really drilled into me as an analyst. And then lastly, I would say that it was exhausting, especially as a Black man in a very white space. I felt like I was always wearing a mask. We kind of joked as analysts, a lot of the analysts of color, that we always needed to have our mask on. And then sometimes after hours, which really means that, in the later hours of the night, around 8 or 9 p.m., we would still be at work, we're able to take our mask off and kind of be our real authentic selves. But for the most part, we were always sort of masking our true selves to fit that very rigid structure.
Yeah, I think that's a really great analogy to kind of talk about that. So I don't want to downplay, you did really talk about how you had those critical thinking and adaptability skills to the space, but also really highlighting your experience as a Black man in that space. I've talked to some other guests about their experience navigating predominantly white institutions. So I want to get a sense from you, what that was like, first of all, and then if you can make some comparisons between predominantly white spaces and predominantly Black and brown spaces, because I think it's important for people to kind of understand that.
Yeah, of course. I would say that first off, I would, coming from Binghamton University, which is a predominantly white institution, I wasn't sort of alien to being in spaces where I may have been the only Black person or only person of color. I would say that what is different about predominantly white institutions when it comes to corporate America or institutions where it comes to sort of a job and a workplace is that people don't have to be accepting. They don't have to embrace your differences. And it's not something that is promoted actively the way it is on a college campus. And differences between working in a predominantly white institution or predominantly Black institution when it comes to career paths is that in predominantly white institutions, I think it's often taboo to talk about race and to talk about culture. Whereas in predominantly Black, workspace settings or corporate settings, those are conversations that are welcomed and celebrated. It's often something that people are engaging with each other on a regular basis, whereas in predominantly white institutions, those are conversations that are sort of kept away or really discouraged.
And what are some of the benefits you found from just talking about it, right? We can all kind of see that it's there. So what have you found to be beneficial about that?
I feel like when you're able to have real, genuine conversations on race relations and really talk to your colleagues about your culture, that's where the inclusivity piece comes in when talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I believe that these are conversations that really are talking about who you are as an individual. And so when you are feeling welcomed and when those conversations are celebrated, you really feel like you can be your authentic self, and you really feel like people are interested in getting to know you for your authentic self, which makes the workplace, I think, much more comfortable, and which, as an employee, makes you want to work harder and makes you want to engage with your colleagues in a more meaningful way.
Yeah, that clear communication is so important. And like you said, it's just a relationship builder, and really just talking about your experiences with your colleagues. So, thinking about how you've navigated office politics, can you talk to us about what that experience has been like for you and if you encountered any challenges?
Definitely. I would say that office politics are always going to be present, whether you're at a very early stage startup or whether you're at a huge institution that's been around for hundreds of years. And so I really, there's no way to avoid office politics. I would say that they are challenging at first, but definitely something that you can navigate if you've been able to navigate politics within any student organizations or even within your classroom when you're having spirited debate about whatever topics may be lectured on. I would say that the best way to navigate them really is to sit back and watch how people are interacting with one another, take the time to learn and understand the customs and the norms of an office, and also make sure you're able to identify a mentor or a colleague maybe who is in a lateral position as you, so that you can ask some questions about how things are done in your new workspace, just so that you aren't doing things that make people have a prejudgment about you, and just to make sure that you're, assimilating into the office culture in ways that are appropriate.
Mm-hmm. And have you been able to find mentors or a mentor in these finance spaces?
I'd say yes, for sure I have. I was lucky to, be a part of a lot of the cultural employee resource groups when I was at a larger financial institution, JP Morgan. And so through those employee resource groups, I was able to identify people who were happy to mentor me, happy to sponsor me, and to have conversations with me about the office politics I was engaging in and really the different norms that were a part of that institution. And I would say on the flip side, as a founding team member of a startup, I was able to help cultivate the community and help decide or really create the framework for what our office politics would look like, for the way we would communicate with one another when there were, issues or topics of contention, and the way we sort of celebrated with one another, making sure that we were developing relationships as colleagues, but also as friends, because you spend so much time working with one another.
I really like how it came full circle in that, right? You talked about how you had your mentor, and then when you went to the smaller startup, you were able to kind of bring that on, those insights that they taught you, and give back to other people in similar positions to where you started. Can you talk to us about some other differences that you've seen in the smaller startups versus the larger firms?
Yeah. At a smaller startup, just because I think because of the size, there's so much less bureaucracy. And so if you have an idea for a celebration that you want to put on, or even a conversation that you want to have based off of current events that may be affecting you or your community, that's something that you can do right then and there with your team. Whereas when you're at a larger corporation, you oftentimes are waiting for things to go down a chain of command before those really important conversations about current events within specific communities or issues that specific communities within the corporation are facing are had. And so I think that is really the glaring difference. Things are able to happen much more quickly in a smaller space than they are in a larger space. I would also say that within a smaller startup, people are forced to be more respectful and more thoughtful about the ways they're interacting with you and about the conversations that they're having around you within the workspace, just because there are so few individuals. And so if there is something that is done that's inappropriate, they're more likely to be held accountable within a very short period of time. Whereas in a larger corporation, because of numbers, people may often feel like it's okay to have insensitive conversations because there would be a long period of time before there was any sort of accountability passed down. And I also think that they would probably be less likely to be reprimanded by any leadership or just by the office community, because there are so many other, there's so many people, so many things going on, things are moving in a much different way.
Yeah, I think that for sure it highlights, if you want more of that intimacy in the workplace, to be in that smaller space. And you really highlight how bigger places, bigger firms become more bureaucratic. Things start to take longer. They have to go through numerous channels, right? Would you say there are any benefits to bigger firms that you've seen?
Yeah, I would say that a bigger firm allows you to really grow and cultivate your network when it comes to colleagues who are focused in a specific sector or line of business that you may be interested in, but also other lines of business and other sort of sectors that you might be interested down the line. And so I really do believe that it's almost priceless having access to a large network of professionals, especially early on in your career, because you're able to bounce ideas off of them and really understand the different ways you could sort of grow and cultivate your own career. I would say that at a startup, those opportunities are sometimes there, but at that point, it's more so you leaning on your colleagues to have them introduce you to their networks rather than having a network or a community at your fingertips where you could just go onto your database or go on into your portal and reach out cold to different professionals you may be interested in connecting with.
Yeah, I think that's a very practical benefit, just more people, bigger network.
Yeah, I would also say that it offers you, depending on the corporation, a lot of the times larger corporations have a lot of brand recognition. And so for your resume, as you're starting out in your career, a lot of the times people want to see that sort of stamp of approval from a larger corporation. And so going to a well-known household name as your first job could be beneficial in that it would allow people to understand sort of the work ethic that you have, or how really talented you are and capable you are of doing your job, because this larger corporation has sort of brought you in and agreed that you are capable of working at least for them.
Mm-hmm. And do you have general advice for students that are interested in pursuing finance?
Yes, I would say that first off, to get your foot in the door, you need to make sure that you are getting good grades in undergrad, which is sort of a given, but also being involved in your community, making sure that you are cultivating your network on campus, but also cultivating your network off campus, which means having internships maybe that are in finance or having internships in related areas. And then also identifying individuals at financial institutions that you're interested in working at and starting to cultivate those networks before you're even interviewing. And so that you are understanding of what the culture is like there, understanding how you may fit into that culture, and really deciding on if that firm is a good fit for you. I would also say that once you get there, you need to make sure that you have grit and perseverance. Make sure that you have a work ethic that is going to really drive you and prove that you belong there once you've gotten yourself in the door. Persevere over any obstacles that may come your way. And last but not least, I would say to do your research to make sure that the firm that you're joining is the right firm for you, and to be very picky about it. There are so many financial institutions out there, and it is definitely a difficult industry to break into, but it's important that folks are able to take the time and the energy to invest in identifying the firms that are right for you, because different financial institutions have different cultures. And so it's most important that you find not only in the institution that's right for you, but also the team within that institution that is going to cultivate you and invest in you so that your career can really take off.
Yeah, it sounds like a very kind of people, coworker focused approach. And I think it's nice to hear you talk about the benefit of kind of that outreach, that informational interviewing, because it's been successful for you. And sometimes that could be a little bit uncomfortable or nerve-wracking for students to kind of reach out to people blindly. But knowing the benefits of it are really, really great for students to hear.
Yeah, I would say that that would be the most beneficial thing that I've been able to do, in my career. I've only been out of school. This is my third year out of undergrad at Binghamton University. And I would say that students should never hesitate to reach out to Binghamton University alumni by doing the quick LinkedIn search where you can see all the Binghamton University alumni and whatever industries that they're in. I have reached out to people, over 100 people with cold LinkedIn messages. And I would say that at least 50% of those individuals get back to me and are willing to have a conversation, which has been helpful in allowing me to identify which institutions would be right for me and what industries what might be right for me as I move into my career.
Great. And my last question for you are, what are 3 changes that you think could be made to corporate spaces that will really enhance inclusion and equity, and particularly looking at men of color?
That's a great question. I would say that it's important for institutions, be they big or small, to have more intentional conversations around race and culture. And in those conversations, for them to highlight the voices of their Black and Brown employees. That would be the first step. The second step would be for companies to promote more people of color into leadership positions. It's so empowering to see leaders that look like you, that have shared experiences when it comes to culture, and then also navigating the corporate space, because they are a shining example of what could be for you in the future, shining examples of what your career trajectory would look like. And without those examples, it feels very alienating sometimes in corporate spaces. And then lastly, I would say that it's important for corporations to incentivize folks in leadership positions to sponsor and mentor Black and Brown employees. We see institutions incentivizing using financial incentives via bonuses and things like that for productivity. But I think that similarly, if they're able to incentivize folks to sponsor and mentor Black and Brown people who work at these institutions, they will be able to see I think a further understanding of culture and a better sort of cultural shift into inclusivity. But also, I think they'll be able to really maximize profits because of a diversity that they'll have access to and a diversity that they'll be tapping into in an active, intentional way.
Yeah, I like the multi-step approach that you included too, right? It's just like, it's not enough to just kind of be aware of the issues. You have to really have that representation, right? Have those real conversations, and then sponsorship, which I do want to highlight and kind of see if you have any direct experiences with it, because it is very much an approach of, I'm an individual in a position of power, and I'm going to really build up the people who have positions under me and take their idea, not just take their ideas, but bring them to conversations where they can discuss their own ideas, right, and elevate themselves. So have you ever been in a situation like that personally, or?
Yes, I definitely have, and I would say that I'm so thankful for it. It happens in so many interesting ways. Sometimes it happens where people who have been mentors to me, or people who have sort of, been a part of my career and educational journey, will introduce me to someone. They'll blindly email me, introducing me to someone who they think would be a person beneficial to my network. Or they'll say, hey, you should join this employee resource group. I think this would be really good for you. Or, hey, I think there's a spot on this committee. Are you interested? Really putting me in rooms that I might not have otherwise been in, or creating space at a table for me that I might not have had access to or even known existed. And so I think that, by networking and cultivating community, at corporations that you're interested in working at, or once you've gotten your foot in the door, you will be finding mentors who can turn into sponsors for you and who can sort of advocate for you at times when you're not in the room, which, was one of the catalysts that took me from being an analyst at JP Morgan to a founding team member at a real estate technology startup. I would also add, for any students who may be tuning in, that, a lot of the times we think of mentors and sponsors as folks who are in senior positions, who are much older than us. But for me, in personal experience, I had a sponsor and mentor who was my same exact age in my same position, who had been poached to make a move out of corporate America into the startup world, and thought, hey, you know what? Jermel's a great worker. He's a hard worker. He should come and help us build this business. And so I would be advising students to not only cultivate mentor, sponsor relationships with folks who are in more senior positions, but to also make sure you're networking in really intentional ways with folks who are in the same positions as you, because as you grow and advance your career, you'll be growing alongside those same individuals, and they may be able to bring you into new and wonderful opportunities.
Yeah, I think the big takeaways for this is definitely networking, but being really strategic about that networking and intentional when you're managing your career, when you're communicating with others, and also just having those good mentors who are able to build you up. So I thank you so much, Jermel, for taking the time to talk to us today. To all the students listening, thank you, and I will see you on the next one.
Thank you so much.